I watched a documentary last night on marijuana. Turns out, best way to watch a documentary.
Come on, man. You can't open with an uncle joke. You can open with a dad joke, not an uncle joke.
All right. So I told my wife last night my neighbor passed away. She said, "Who, Ray?" I said, "It's way too early to celebrate like that." No? You know that 85% of people struggle with math? I am glad I'm in the 20%.
That's right, buddy. Me too.
Yeah, I'll bring it to this. My son, he's been getting into golf a lot lately, and it's been great to go down and play. He's like, "Dad, hey, this next time we got to bring 2 pairs of pants to golf." And I go, "Why?" He goes, "Because you might get a hole in one."
Oh, I love kid dad jokes, right?
Yeah. He
did it on his own. It was great. It was.
I was washing my car with my kid last night, and he asked me, "Dad, can't we just use a towel?"
Like, yeah.
That one took a second.
No, well, we get it. Rudy, I'm still waiting for you to share your screen before we kick off. And
sorry, I didn't.
Listen, guys, I was walking down the street and got hit with a French horn, a violin, and an upright cello. I realized it was an orchestrated attack. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining episode 20 of Integrate Live. Today is virtual workshop day. That means we are rolling up the sleeves and we are going to get into the weeds on actually building out a project live in front of you. And Alan and I are extremely pleased to have Rudy and Isidro with us today. Rudy is with Stratus. He is the head of the Alliance program, partner program within Stratus. And Isidro is a co-founder and the CTO at Barbara. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
And to the rest of our audience, I bet you don't need any introduction to the panelist who's joining us as commentary today. Travis was actually just laughing, saying, "Hey, this is one of those where I don't have to actually drive something. I get to enjoy and ask the tricky questions." Travis, when's the last time you bowled a perfect score? How long ago?
Just a couple months ago.
Just a couple months ago. The guy that I love to hate when it comes to anything sports, Travis Cox with Inductive Automation. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me here. And like I said, this is great. I get to come in and see some cool demos and answer some questions. Love it.
That's right. Well, let's get started. Rudy, if you would, can you give us a sense of the role you're going to play today and your lab environment? Maybe give us a tour if you don't mind.
Sure. So today what we're going to tackle really is all around remote deployments and how you can do that at scale. How you can deploy some edge compute and some software layers at scale in a manufacturing environment. As you know, some of the things that you have to deal with are distance, connectivity, and maybe some not so technical expertise in the field. That's going to be me today. I will play the role of our field technician, and I am going to help us connect Isidro. Before I do, should I give an overview of the stack that we're going to deploy, or should I show you what I've got going with the hardware?
Tell you, let's start with the hardware tour. Let me get your cell phone put together for us. 1 second.
Okay. I'm going to go to the shop.
All right. Sounds good, bud.
So can you guys see okay?
We've got you.
All right. So what I've got here at the bottom of my cabinet, you're going to see 2 ZTC edges. This is our class 1 div 2 redundant server systems that are going to host everything. Right there in the middle, we have a UPS for backup for one of the systems. So one of them is on power from my house. The other one is via the UPS in case we have any hiccups. And then at the top, I have 2 separate network switches. One is designed to simulate what our IT network is going to be on and connected to. And the bottom one is designed to simulate our process network, where all of our process data would be coming in. Pretty straightforward. This is essentially the starting point. When we look at how we would be doing a deployment in the field, it would be as simple as DIN rail mount our ZTC edges, connect our network switches, make sure that we're in the right connection, and power them up. And that is where we're going to begin.
And your job today is basically to put the hardware in place, power it up, and plug it into the network. Is that basically what you've done?
Yeah, I'm going to have one more step after that I'll walk you through, but that's where we'll start our demo.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
Let me get rid of your camera, and we are back into our studio. And just make sure you've got good comms. We had to shuffle some mics and speaker configurations.
Sure.
Okay.
Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, we do. All right.
Nice shirt, by the way, Jeff.
What's that, Alan?
It's a nice shirt, man. Way to pick
Are we twinning? Yeah, we're twinning today. Look at that. Yeah, nice. Okay. So sorry, you threw me for a loop. Rudy, let's go over the architecture of what we're going to do. And also, if you would, assume I know nothing, because I probably do, about the Stratus ZTC, and tell me a little bit about the hardware, if you would, as you walk us through.
Great. Okay. So what we have here is what we're going to deploy at the end of the day-to-day, right? So at the bottom left, we'll start down here. This is just essentially a device creating data that's putting it on our network via MQTT. And what we've done is we've added 2 ZTC edge nodes. This line right here is our network, showing that we've got P2 connected into the network, and we actually have it going from both nodes. A ZTC edge out of the box, what it does is you get redundant hardware, right? So this is a completely redundant server system with Stratus redundant Linux virtualization layer. So it's got virtualization built into it. And you see these 2 networks down here at the bottom, A1 and A2. What we're doing is we're replicating and doing all of our redundancy on these 2 networks. And of course, you've got to have redundant networks in order to do that in case you were to lose any of that. The design with the Stratus system is that we're going to take all of the redundancy that you would have to build into each individual application, and we do it with hardware. So if you lose a node, it continues to operate with 0 downtime, and we can configure each VM to either be high availability or fault tolerant, which is 0 downtime and 0 data loss. On top of that, what we're going to do today is we're going to deploy 3 virtual machines into the field. And really the idea is to show what a typical edge IIoT deployment or SCADA deployment might look like in the field. The first VM that we're going to deploy is going to have Barbara's agent installed on it. And it's going to be, we're going to use it in order to deploy Ignition via Docker. We are also going to have what's called the Stratus tunnel and the Stratus manager within that virtual machine. And you'll see that's how we're managing the entire system. The other virtual machine we're going to deploy is Canary. So we're going to show data flowing into Canary. Something to point out is that it's a completely different operating system that we're going to deploy. We wanted to make sure that we have something that's running on Windows Server. So we have a mix of operating systems. And then the third virtual machine we're going to create is going to have this Ming stack, all via Docker, and it's going to have MQTT, Influx database, Node-RED, and Grafana, and we'll show data flowing through all of them. The big kicker to this whole thing is that we're going to have Barbara panel over here. In this case, this is sitting in the cloud, and it is going to be driven by Isidro remotely. And how remotely, you might ask? Well, I'm sitting in Dallas, Texas, and Isidro is in Madrid, Spain. So what you're going to see today is that I'm going to install this first virtual machine, make sure Isidro has connection, and let him take it away from there.
Awesome. And Isidro, give us just a quick overview. What is Barbara? What is the purpose of the technology? Who would use it?
So Barbara is an edge orchestration system. Basically, it's cloud-based, but it can also be installed in private clouds or in on-prem. So what it does is it has an agent on the field. In this case, it's a VM because we have our own operating system. The operating system provides the security and user experience that is very adapted for for OT environments. So once you have all these nodes deployed on the edge, you can actually manage them from a central location. And we provide a lot of capabilities on the control plane. We are not a data plane company, so we don't provide dashboards or data management. That's why we actually join with Ignition. We join with the Mean Stack or Canary. Okay, so we are not in the data plane, and then we are not a hardware manufacturer. So we build the OS, and the OS can be installed in Stratus in a VM flavor, but it can also be installed in other hardwares. So, for example, for this redundancy, we ally with Stratus that we think it's a very good solution for OT environments with the redundancy part.
Thank you. Alan, Travis, let's just talk real quick the business problem, right? Like, what's the pain point that you come across? What right now in your head is flashing through, Alan, that you're saying, hey, this is why this matters? Frame it up for the audience, if you guys would.
Well, in the OT space specifically, redundancy has probably created far more downtime than actual equipment failure, right? And so having something out of the box that is redundant and has been resilient and not complex is pretty helpful. The question I have, which I think we'll get to, is it's the problem we always deal with, right? You're talking about an OT server stack that resides in OT that we're giving access to the cloud, right? So security is a big factor here. So how do we get the OT environment comfortable to a place where they can feel confident that this can be done and it's safe or secure.
Yeah, not only does this, the infrastructure, we have to look at resiliency and redundancy, which is critical in a lot of situations. Management becomes a big task, right? So if you think of the old way of going and literally putting out a computer, a PC on the line or out in the floor, installing an operating system on it, now it's something you have to manage going forward. Keeping them up to date, the patching of the OS, patching of all the applications, services that are running on it, and a lot of environments, OT was still responsible for all the OT equipment and hardware, and that wasn't an IT-led effort. Today we look at digital transformation, Industry 4.0 initiatives. That just means more edge, more computers, more things to manage. And IT is equipped to be able to handle a lot of these things. So being able to have OT, like you're saying, Alan, connect securely to these environments, allow the management to flow and happen by the right teams, and can allow, of course, the OT folks to focus on the applications and the resiliency that they need. And here, being able to deploy new applications and services quickly, to the different nodes that are out there, gives a lot of flexibility, right? That orchestration layer allows us to, if we need to move things around, we can move it around. We can guarantee these things are going to run, and we can keep them up to date in a much more first-class way, right? It's more of one-click deployment, manage it all centrally. That's a big deal. So this kind of technology is entering the OT arena in a pretty incredible, fast rate. And it's the technology there. It's the tools are there. It's about being able to leverage them and kind of make that available in the OT space. So excited to see what they're going to show today.
Yeah. I just add one thing to that. One of the problems that we have in OT is specifically around skill set, right? You have the skill set in the IT around virtualization, Docker, and all these different things. And so having this kind of middleware that does a lot of the work for you, that you don't have to bring all that deep knowledge into the technology, is very helpful, right? Because a lot of the separation between IT and OT, you're not going to have your OT professionals going and contacting IT, going, "Hey, come help me set this up." It's just not going to happen. Right. So if they can't do it, you're not getting past the front door.
Yeah. And the reality is too, right? Just speaking on that side, on the OT side, we're not running towards Docker across all the OT instances that we're actually, if you're a software vendor, firsthand, you're still doing a ton of Windows VMs. It's nice to see, though, that now I have a transition as OT starts to embrace this. Hey, to our audience, please use the comment field throughout this. Log your questions, tell some dad jokes. At a minimum, register, tell us where you're watching from. And if you want a little extra credit, tell us what you're currently running from a hardware perspective on the edge and what software you're running on the edge. If you want, tell us some of your frustrations or problems, or work them into some questions for the panel. We'll take them as they come in, or we might hold a few of the really good ones for the end. All right, Rudy, can you walk us through the very first step? This is going to be a multi-stage process. What's the first step that we have ahead of us?
You got it. So step number one, where we're beginning, right, this is where we are currently. Basically, we've got a data simulator publishing data. We're connected onto the network. As you saw, I did my technician work. I got my DIN rail installed, and I got power landed and an Ethernet cable landed, and I've got my system up and running. I do want to point out that it takes about a 30-minute install. We can post it to get Stratus redundant Linux up and running and connected on two systems. It's designed to be done in the field by field technicians, so even I can do it. So this is where we are today. The very first thing that we're going to do is we are going to create the first VM and give Isidro access to our system. Okay. So I'm gonna walk you through how we do that. One second, let me get out of this PowerPoint. So when you log into Stratus, the very first thing you're going to see, this is the Stratus GUI, right? So I am locally here connected via my network. So I've got a network cable going from my home router into that P1 switch, and I get to the Stratus GUI and console. The very first thing that we're going to do is we log into the system, and you'll see your virtual machines and your entire system. If you have any alerts, it'll tell you right here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a virtual CD to load onto our system. Now, the way we're going to do that, as you see, I've already got a couple that I've created in the past. But what we do is we go into Barbara's website. So I need to log in here. I already have a Barbara account to start off, and you'll see I actually have two ZTCs that are in my account. But let's pretend like we're starting from scratch. What I do is I go into Barbara's system. I click here on the hamburger menu. I click OS images, and as you'll see, they've got a whole lot of different images for different machines that you might use. We'll scroll over here to the side, and I actually use this KVM image. I click it. I click this download button, and it'll download the ISO file for me. Okay, that ISO file goes here, and it goes into my downloads, and then I go in here to virtual CDs, and I'll say create a virtual CD. Now, in the field, this could be done via USB. Right, I could take my USB and I could stick it into my ZTC Edge, and that's how I create it, or on my computer here. I'm going to simulate like I'm doing this. I've already done it. So I'd go to Barbara. I'd create an ISO. I'd go to browse. I'd go into my downloads. Obviously, it's not going to be there. You saw I had some ISOs there, but it would be in here. It's actually right here, right? Once I click finish here, again, I'm not going to do it today just for the sake of time, but I'll have this virtual CD created here. Now what I do is I'd go into virtual machines. This would in theory be empty, and I would click create. Now I'm going to create my first virtual machine, right? So what I do is I'd say demo. I launch it from Wi-Fi with a virtual CD, and I would only have one option here, which is the one that I created. I go next. I choose whether I want it to be fault tolerant, high availability, or unprotected. Should I go through an explanation of what those are?
Yes.
Real brief. Okay. Unprotected is just like you're deploying on an IPC. It's going to run on one of the boxes, and it's not going to be replicated on the other. High availability means it's going to run on one box, and if that box were to fail, it's going to start back up on the other, and I'm going to be down in the amount of time that it takes it to start back up on the second virtual machine. Very common installation there. And then Stratus also provides fault tolerance. What fault tolerance means is I'm actually running this virtual machine on both nodes simultaneously without the application knowing. And that's what Stratus provides, right? Is we're running the application on both sides simultaneously. If one node gets lost, the primary node gets lost, you're going to have zero data loss, zero downtime. You just continue to operate on the other node, and you'll get a notification that you lost your redundancy. Okay, that's the mode that we're running in, and you can see on these images in the background. You can mix and match them to be high availability or fault tolerant. So here I would assign the amount of CPUs, virtual CPUs that you want to give to the system, right? And then I would tell it how much memory. Maybe I'd do 6 gig, right? And then my drive right here, I tell it where I'm booting from. And then lastly, I would tell it this virtual machine, what network does it have access to? I have 6 Ethernet ports on the back of my ZTC Edge. Now for the Barbara one, we're going to give it access to P1, which is where I have internet connection northbound and out, okay? If I wanted to maybe just deploy an application that was only on my OT network, as you saw, I had 2 switches, I would pick P3, P4, P5, whatever it was, and just put it on that network. Click next. Once I click finish here, it'll actually create and launch the VM, okay? I'm not gonna do that today since we already have it up and running. Now, when you go in here to the Barbara VM, it would begin to build this. This takes a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes to build. And I would click in here on console, okay? And what you're going to see in the Barbara console is a whole lot of nothing because you can't do a whole lot from here, except for it's gonna flash this QR code and it's gonna have this Barbara ID at the top. So if we go back, essentially my job here as a technician is now done, okay? What I need to do now is I take a picture of this QR code. It's going to copy this ID. And if for some reason I can't take a picture, I would just write this ID down. And this is what I'm going to give to Isidro, who's going to take over from here. So that is step 1. If I go back into my presentation, right? I've created this virtual machine with Barbara installed on it. Step 2 is I'm going to securely connect VM1 to panel, okay?
And that's what by passing the QR code to Isidro, that's going to initiate essentially a unique endpoint for him to connect to and connect to the agent.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So scan this QR code. I give this code.
Right. I just want to be very clear here. It's not that I'm connecting to the endpoint, but actually the machine is going to be connecting to me. Because there is something very important about security, is that about outgoing and incoming connections. So Barbara puts a lot of effort on the security aspect of the operating system and the whole infrastructure. So all the things that you're going to be seeing today are actually outgoing connections. I think there is already a question about that. We work in limited environments, and of course, if you have a super critical environment, you're not going to get even an outgoing connection, okay? But in a lot of medium, less critical environments, outgoing connections is not a problem as long as you give the ports and what it's going to be connected to actually go from the DM set or from the level 3 to actually to the cloud. If not, let's say for critical environments, we also provide on-prem solutions where the Barbara platform can be installed directly on the premises of the customer. Even we have a light version that can be installed in the factory, or let's say in a small VM. So yeah, coming back to Rudy's comment, he's providing me an ID, but that ID is not me going to the machine. It's the machine coming to the platform. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so
go ahead. Or should I explain the step of what you're doing next?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please do.
Yep. So as Isidro pointed out, right, here's the arrow where it's going to reach out to Barbara panel, right? And we're going to connect to it. So Isidro, do you want to show the team how we do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I'll let you take over from here.
Okay, so I'm joining the same company as Rudy has been showing before. So I log into the platform. Again, my token has expired, just like. Okay, so we have here a couple of machines that are already provisioned. In this case, Rudy is sending me this QR code or the whole ID. So I will basically take that ID that I have it here pasted. I will add it as the node ID. I can put a name to that machine. So let's say new VM. I can group it. So basically, I can have groups of nodes depending on whether I have different factories or different logical divisions for my nodes. And I actually can put tags. That is a very good practice. So you can then filter when you have a lot of nodes here. Okay. So I'm going to create it. It's going to fail, of course, because that VM is already provisioned here. It's called Rudy set DCH. Okay. But if it was the case, I would just provision it, and it will give me, okay, there is a security boot happening. We will see afterwards. But eventually you will end up with this. That is that you have the machine here, and you can manage it from the cloud, okay? So what are we going to be doing on this machine is the first thing I'm going to do, because it takes some time, is I'm going to deploy one of the applications that Rudy had in its architecture that is called the Stratus Manager. So the Stratus Manager is an application that I can actually manage from here, from Spain, to actually deploy new VMs in Stratus without the need to get into the UI of Stratus. Okay, so I'm going to deploy that.
And you connected to what, the Barbara marketplace in order to find that?
Yeah, I'm gonna deploy it, and then we will talk about the marketplace.
I see.
1 minute, okay? Because this
saving
takes
us the
some time. I wanted to have it properly deployed.
Okay.
So Stratus Manager, I'm gonna add some variables. So I have to put the Stratus password. I have it here. Okay, and now I'm gonna be telling I'm gonna load the config that I have prepared here. That is to create two VMs. I'm creating two VMs in the Stratus UI. I'm creating one with fault tolerance, 6 GB of RAM, and it's gonna take the image from Barbara, so it's a Barbara type. And then I'm also creating a Windows virtual machine with 8 GB and 30 gigs of hard drive with 4 virtual CPUs. Okay, so I'm gonna put this to work, okay, because it takes some time, and then we can talk about a little bit about the marketplace and where does this application comes from. Okay, so I send it to the VM, and now it's basically our orchestration platform is based on Docker Compose. I didn't put the proper thing. My God, demo.
I think the password reverted back what you had in there.
Probably there is something wrong with the password, or let me do that again.
And that is the password that I set for the GUI when I started up the system.
It came back. My God. Here, create VMs, same configuration. It's 10.0.50. That's internal network. Okay. Now it's deploying the Docker. and it looks much better now. Okay, so now it's creating the VMs, okay? So what we are doing here is from a central point, and actually I could be launching this application to several nodes, okay? So from a central point in the cloud, I'm already creating other VMs from in the Stratus platform. So where does this Stratus Manager comes from? I'm going to show you a little bit about our marketplace. In our marketplace, what you can have is a lot of applications. Most of them have open source applications, but they are ready to be deployed with Barbara. So any of these applications, you can click it and add it to your library, and you will have it available in your platform to be deployed to any of the nodes, okay? There is a wizard that you have seen where you could configure the different variables and things, okay? The one I'm gonna deploy next, following a little bit about the script that we are doing today in the architecture, it's gonna be the Stratus tunneling. It's on IT tools, I guess. Yeah. So I already have it purchased, so it's already in my library. So if it wasn't, I would basically take it from load it in my library from here. So I will go now. I will keep this Stratus Manager working. We will talk a little bit about the interface and everything. So I'm going to deploy another marketplace app. It's going to be the Stratus tunnel. And I'm going to configure where the Stratus is. That is the 10.0.0.250. I don't remember. Okay.
And Rudy, what's the tunnel allow him to do?
So the tunnel allows him to get access to the Stratus GUI from where he is, right? So you can't access the GUI because he's in Spain and I'm here. So what the tunnel does is it actually goes into at the Stratus VM level. And then since it's on the network, it reaches back out and it hits that 10.0.0.250 address and allows him to hit the GUI.
How? Because Barbara provides a VPN service, okay? So Barbara has an outgoing connection between that machine and my computer going through a central node. And Barbara provides that service for you to debug or to do, let's say, actions on the node as if it was in your central, in your local network. Okay? So I have this VPN available, and I can, even though I'm not in this network, I will be connecting and doing the whole demo through this VPN. Okay. So how is that VPN? Is my computer is actually connected to the VPN. Where do I get that VPN? I can go here to my account and download my VPN credential. So I can download the credentials. You have a nice article in our documentation system that is Academy, where you can actually see how to configure the WireGuard agent to actually configure the VPN. No? So everything that we will be doing today is actually based on the VPN service of Barbara that comes out of the box. There is no need for configuring tunnels or anything. And everything is done again with outgoing connections. So there is no open ports or anything that you need to open on your infrastructure. Okay.
So now that interrupt here real quick, Isidro. I'd like to show you guys what's happening on my end, if that's okay, before Isidro continues.
Yeah, actually, I can do it here from the tunnel.
Oh, yeah, you can actually show it too, can't you?
And Rudy, if you would reshare your screen so I have it available to myself to be able to share when it's ready.
So I go to the VPN address of that VM, and I just go, because I have the Stratus tunneling working. It's actually doing a tunnel between the Stratus UI and my computer, so I can actually see what Rudy is seeing in Texas. So I can just log in as if it was my of course, it's not as fast as it would be with Rudy, but because I have to do a whole VPN between our data center is at the moment in Frankfurt, so it would be Frankfurt, Texas, back to Spain. So I can see that what is happening now in what Rudy was saying is that actually the Stratus Manager is doing this job, so has created a couple of VMs. One is Barbara, and the other one is Windows. Okay, I'm gonna actually quit the Windows because we are not gonna be using this one today. So just to keep it lighter, I'm going to power off that one. But because we have Windows takes some time, as you know, it will take to install a whole Windows. It will take some time. I'm going to keep the Barbara secondary because we'll use it at the end of the demo. We will load it into the platform. So instead of these windows, we're going to be playing with this canary that we already have installed in the platform. The interesting thing about the tunneling is that actually from Spain, I can now go into the console, and actually the whole platform is tunneled to my computer. So I can go into that Windows and actually look at my canary that is already working, okay? So I'm gonna log in properly. Okay, so I have now this canary working. So if maybe go back to the architecture.
Sure.
It's a good moment to do that.
Yeah, I'll show the architecture again because I think we've done a lot here. So here's where we were, right? I gave Isidro the QR code. It reached out. He connected via panel. He went to the marketplace and he downloaded the Stratus tunnel and the Stratus manager into his panel account. Okay, you only need to do that once. He then pushed from panel the Stratus tunnel and the Stratus manager, right? After that, he told the Stratus manager, I want you to create 2 virtual machines. So he created the Windows one. This is the one we canceled because it takes a long time and it's already up and running. And then he created this other virtual machine right here, VM3. Okay. With us so far?
Yep.
Okay. The next step, right, is he's going to go to Marketplace. He's going to download Ignition to his panel account, and then he's going to push panel into the same push Ignition via panel into the same virtual machine that is running the Stratus manager and the Stratus tunnel.
Okay.
Got
So now we are back in the marketplace. I'm gonna go to Ignition. We have 2 versions of Ignition that are the ones that they provide as the official ones. So it's Ignition standalone and the Ignition redundancy. I'm gonna go for the standalone. I already have it in library. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my panel, and I'm gonna keep deploying things. So I'm gonna add another marketplace application. In this case, it's gonna be the Ignition standalone. We provide the version. Actually, in advance, you can also tell whether you want to run it just after installing, and well, some advanced options. And you get this documentation to actually configure the Ignition. Travis, you are very familiarized with these variables. So if you have a license key, you can put it here at the moment. You can tell the edition that you are doing, and also you can configure the username and the password that you will have afterwards in the Ignition platform. Okay, so nothing super fancy here. Just configuration. You put your configuration values, and there is nothing else to configure because we have 2 levels of configuration. One is the JSON, and the other one is environment variables. In the case of Ignition, there is no JSON to configure, so I will send it to the device. Okay. Actually, we are cheating a little bit because all these images have been already downloaded. So in Barbara, we don't delete anything ever. You can actually delete them if you go here and prune the images of the Docker. Okay, you can delete the space and everything. But if you don't delete anything, everything stays on cache. So basically, you can always come back, and you don't need to download all those big images in your device over and over. Okay, if you are running or developing or whatever. So now we have Ignition.
If I just want to put a pin on this for Travis for later, potential possibilities of where this could go based on pre-configuration or having configuration already. Maybe I've got 5 different versions of configuration that I use for Ignition, and I noticed potentially a JSON or a file-based configuration option there. So something that we can talk about when we come to a little breakpoint.
Yeah, actually, with some of our partners, what we do is that we do a launcher. So we put some process that comes before Ignition, let's say, or for example, with other partners, and that will do the whole configuration that is required for the program. taking the values from the JSON and the environment variables, and then finally passing them to the final program. In this case, we are taking the ignition as it is, also because it's quite good, actually. I have to say it's a very good piece of software. So now we have ignition up and running, and it's in this it's in that computer that is in Texas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the IP from my VPN, and instead of going to the Stratus interface, I'm going to go to the ignition interface. Okay, is it here? You have some issues with the cookies. I mean,
no, you're fine, Cedric. You problem solved that, and Travis, look at there, perfect opportunity to do some comment. Thank you.
I need to delete the cookies or something like that. Let me do that again.
Well, I was going to go off to your previous comment there, Jeff, and that the idea here, being able to deploy, ignition as here's, get it up and running, fresh install. It's really simple. But if you've got a lot of customers have kind of, predefined the way, the ways in which the kinds of configuration they want to deploy out there, right? They might have ignition edge data collection nodes that they put out, on the lines themselves. And maybe with that, they have some they already have some baked config they want in ignition. So they'll have a backup already loaded within that. And, or they'll have, they'll want, another type of configuration. It's essential, like a central ignition node, or they want to deploy the whole stack. Maybe there's multiple things they want to get out there, a dev and a production environment that they want to get loaded. So the cool thing here is you can make all those kinds of config options and be able to have that one-click select, because you define all that centrally and just deploy it out there. And so it saves a tremendous amount of time, because if you were to do that the classic way of going out and getting an installer, right, downloading it and putting it onto a machine, installing it, getting up and running, and then going in, making those configuration changes or loading backups and all that, that's time consuming. And so this is what's so cool about this technology is with orchestration. It is designed to be managed centrally, one-click deployment, and if they want to make changes and all that, it's real easy to do it. And I'll just make one quick comment, because I know it's working now back there, Isidro, but we're moving towards, and we have a new release coming out at the end of this year that is going to enhance this kind of orchestration, in that it's going to have more environment variables that can be passed in, so that you can specify certain configs right from that, like he was putting username, passwords, and license file and all that. A lot more environment config variables for that config, so you don't have to have a gateway backup to load in. We're also gonna have a REST API built into Ignition that's going to allow for for checking status, integrated with these tools really well, as well as to be able to modify config centrally on running instances. So we're doing more to facilitate this kind of orchestration or CI/CD, because it is, if you take advantage of it, it's a massive time savings.
Those are very good news for us, actually, to say.
Yes, we'll have to talk, Isidro, more.
Yeah, about that, about the whole flavor and things. I haven't really talked about it. I have it somewhere in my script, but the marketplace are not the only ones that you can deploy on Barbara. Okay? So these are marketplace applications that I have in my library at the moment, but I can also deploy my own applications. So, for example, when we have customers that are big enough, most of the times they don't use marketplace applications. They actually build their own applications. They want to have a specific flavor of Grafana or a specific flavor of Ignition, and they want to build their own Docker Compose, and they want to build their own images, even private registries. All that is supported by Barbara. But that's why you can actually build your own applications. You don't need to actually stay linked to the marketplace. But it's true that in the OT space, there is a lot of small, medium enterprises that they don't really want. They just want to have the application, and they just click here, take a database, what we are doing today. A couple of clicks, and you get something up and running. Okay. So I was while you were talking, I was installing some modules on Ignition. I installed the MQTT engine. I'm also going to install the Canary module that I have it here. Okay. We are going to connect Ignition on the south side. We're going to connect it to the MQTT broker that we have externally generating data. And on the north side, we're going to connect Ignition to Canary. So we can use it as an historian in another VM. Okay? So we have those modules. I'm going to configure the Canary.
While you do that, Isidro, just for the audience's point of view, we've already configured Canary to accept the feed. So you're not going to see that, but if there's previous IntegrateLive episodes you can look back at and see how Canary's admin needs to be configured specifically on the sender panel to receive this signal. So you won't see that in today's demo.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is very fascinating on my experience, specifically with Docker and the cloud, has been that when we were trying to do some edge work around with MQTT in Ireland, and we were very successful right up until the point we wanted to deploy Docker in the cloud. And at that moment, our IT infrastructure team said, we can't do it. We don't have the policies or standards to be able to feel confident that we can deploy anything in the cloud and be secure from a Docker standpoint. We had lots of standards around Windows servers and different things that we were doing in the cloud, but Docker we just didn't have the maturity in, and so we really got kind of derailed and never were able to get the project off the ground because of that one component. Where now you have the capability of being able to do that exact same thing, except now you're doing it on-prem. It's contained, it's secure, and it really gives you an opportunity to take advantage of some of these things without having to understand the complexity of security in the cloud. And if I spin up a Docker container, how do I secure it? What's the mechanisms to do that? What's the policies I need to put in place, and the standards, all those things. So again, it's fascinating, just as I'm sitting here watching you work and understanding the complexity of what we've dealt with in the past. The opportunity for OT is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's something that we see all the time. It's like, why is people moving to the edge? And we talked the other day on the roundtable about this IT-OT convergence. But we see a lot of controls on the OT space. So, for example, we used to not support the private Docker repositories, but we said so there were customers asking for that because actually they want to have everything contained. They want to control their own Docker images. They want to run the images that have been, let's say, tested and in another environment. So maybe by the IT guys, the security guys. So there is a lot of things that tells you, okay, don't run this thing on the cloud. Just run it when close to where the data is, but also in a very contained manner, so it cannot get out of there. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I just created the. I hope most of the audience will be somehow related with Ignition, so this is nothing weird for them. I have configured the MQTT and the Canary modules, so I'm gonna be connecting now to the Ignition. I want to remark here that I'm connecting still through the VPN. So this Ignition is not running anywhere it's actually running in root displays. So everything is happening through this tunnel connection, outgoing connection, secure connection. Okay?
Is this where we're going to turn off Rudy's office lights, run his blender, and shut down his sprinkler system?
You had the air purifier going crazy yesterday.
Yeah.
Something else that I'd point out, one of the applications you guys might have seen on my screen when I showed there is, we're looking at every device that you have to deploy in the field, and every piece of hardware, especially when you start getting at scale, it's hard, right? It's another piece of hardware that could one break, you've got to power it, you've got to connect it, you've got to manage it, you've got to manage the versions. A popular application right now for us is virtual firewalls, right? And one of the really cool things, especially in the flavor of security that we're doing here, is creating one virtual machine in the stack that only has access to that P1 and P2, right? And what it does is literally it's a firewall. It connects me to the outside world, but then it creates a completely separate OT network. So I have that running in my office most of the time. I have internet access through my home network, but then south of it is a completely different IP address and schema, and a whole network that is completely managed by my virtual firewall. So we're deploying, in this case, it's a FortiGate virtual firewall that's set up and running and protected. And I can filter what kind of traffic is allowed through it, what's not allowed through it. I'm scanning, I'm monitoring the network. Making sure no bad guys get in and do anything nefarious, and that's become really popular. And many times people think of you add edge computing and you're increasing your attack surface, but if you do it correctly, what you're doing is you're actually securing and adding to your security posture by deploying more IT allowed tools and network protection tools. So it's become very popular.
So you said you were using Fortinet. Are you also using Checkpoint and Palo and?
I've got Fortinet and Palo Alto running right now. Not Checkpoint. Really, for us is as long as you can virtualize it, you can run it. So we do the Fortinet and the Palo Alto firewalls. You could run Clarity. You could run Nozomi. You could run you name it, Dragos. Even on the OT side, right? So again. Yeah. You create this OT network. How do you know what's on it? How do you know nobody's gotten into it, et cetera? And there are so many tools now that are being developed that are, one, monitoring normal state, but then also saying, hey, what's changed? Someone's attacking it, and what does that look like? And again, it's another reason why you shouldn't just put a little IPC out there that's just sized to run my application. Really what our perspective is that you put a powerful device out there that's, one, reliable enough that your operations can depend on it, but two, powerful enough that you can deploy your cybersecurity applications on it as well in one environment. Then you use your orchestration agent to react and handle any issues as they come in.
Yeah, and I want to point out one that what's happened so far again, in that you literally ship the IP, ship the Stratus ETC Edge to computers, to the facility. Somebody goes in, installs the cabinet, gets Ethernet cable connected, right, and gets that base OS image in there, and then your entire stack, talking about whether it's Ignition, right, MQTT brokers, databases, Canary, Historian, your firewalls, and many other services that are, going to be what you need to have out there, are all deployed with a single click from this interface. Whereas, if you forgot one of those steps and you do leave yourself open, right, that stack is important. So I just want to point out the simplicity of it, and that, you literally go and put a computer out there, and now everything that you need is deployed automatically to it and is correct, has the right config, mistake proofed on that, which is huge time savings from the way that it had to be done before. So I just point it out again, because it's like sometimes people tell us, Travis, you take for granted how simple it is to install your software and all that. And I don't even say it, but same thing here, right? We can't take for granted what just happened and what you're doing. So I just want to point it out again.
Well, if you're dealing with a global company, right, like a global manufacturing company, and you try to, because the problem with OT is that OT will run out of compute capacity pretty quickly, right? And it's very difficult to ship iron to Brazil or even places in the Middle East. And so, you're talking, I've seen up to 6 months to get hardware to the site. And that's not because the hardware is not available. It's getting it through customs, getting all the things you have to do. And so being able to have the capacity to have the compute, as you were saying, Rudy, that, in the event that there was a security tool that you needed to deploy quickly. If you don't have the compute to do it, then now you're talking about, okay, now we got to do a multi-year project to get compute to all our sites so we can deploy this software, or you do it in a week.
Yeah. Think about what we all went through here recently, getting PLCs, right? So many projects were delayed because you couldn't get PLCs. I could spin up a virtual soft PLC and run it in minutes, right? And that could be, if you don't want to run control that way all the time, hey, maybe it's your backup plan, and maybe you don't need to have redundant PLCs because you've got a redundant compute system that's reliable that can take that workload even if it's in the meantime. Or maybe you just want to innovate a little, test something, right? Deploy it, remove it, a changing stack. Those things are very difficult to do when you have to ship hardware. But if you have a powerful edge compute system there, it reduces the time on those innovation cycles and allows you to move faster.
Well, why hasn't soft PLCs or soft control been used? What's the reason? Everyone knows it starts
What
with
if it breaks, right?
W, right? Or M, Microsoft, right? No one wants to run their control system on Microsoft or Windows platforms, and the redundancy is not robust enough, resilient enough, right? So that's where this, you start to bring in the orchestration, the containerization, all these different things that we will now start to open up opportunity to be able to do some of these things we've never been comfortable doing before.
Totally agree.
So where are we here?
Yeah, I think Cedra's
I've
got
been doing
the
stuff. I've been doing stuff around.
He's been waiting on it.
So yeah, I'm configuring the ignition. So I connected to the external MQTT. This external MQTT we have in this demo has 4 variables that are RPM, speed, temperature. So I've been able to basically visualize. One is a sinus function. The other one is just a ramp that goes up and down.
And this is the demo data that Rudy you're producing right there on the ZTC.
I'm actually producing it on my wife's computer on the same network. We stole it from her.
The next level of virtualization, your wife's computer. Yeah, then I have configured the tag of temperature to actually connect to the historian of Canary. So since I connected before, now we go back to our user interface and we go to if we go back to the VM of Windows VM that has Canary, we will see that there is basically a tag that is being populated on the other VM. Okay, so now we have a set of so Canary historian console. I'm not an expert on this, so don't take me. So now we have one tag that is being populated that is coming here to the historian, and then you can play with it and take all the powerful, all of the power of Canary. Okay. So if we go back, I'm going to continue with the script. Maybe it's good if we go back to where we are, Rudy.
Yep. So here's where we are, right? He downloaded Ignition from the marketplace, deployed it. We're flowing data through Ignition into, we see the data in Canary. The next step is we're going to now securely connect the other panel image, or I'm sorry, Barbara image into panel. So he'll see it as another node, right? It's another virtual machine. And then I'm gonna go ahead and give a click because I have a feeling we're gonna run to it. We're also then going to take our entire Ming stack from our marketplace in panel, and we're gonna deploy it within that image. So once again, we're gonna connect VM3, and we're gonna deploy applications to it.
So coming back to my screen, what I have here now.
If we could just tease to the audience, because I want them to hang on and see the final piece, right? Let's tease the audience with what's coming. We promise zero touch. We also promise zero downtime.
All right, so it's going to be the fun part, guys. After we get everything up and running, I haven't been doing anything here. I've just been sitting on my hands patiently, right? I'm the field technician. The one thing I am very good at is breaking things. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to simulate a failure, right? We're going to set this guy. I'm not going to set it on fire because I can't do that, but I'm going to take my primary node off. And we're going to see what it does to our data, what it does to our applications. We're going to see what happens live in real time when I kill a node. So yeah, that'll be our grand finale and my personal favorite part.
Perfect. Thanks, Rudy.
Okay, so coming back, do you remember we were here? We had the Barbara, the first one that we created. Then with the Stratus Manager, we created another two. That was Barbara Secondary and Windows Secondary. I'm gonna go to Barbara Secondary, and I'm gonna do what we did at the beginning with Rudy. So I'm gonna pick. I have my extension. Let me take it with.
Yeah,
Wait a
fine.
No. Let's do it this way. Sorry, I had a QR scanner, but it's not working because it's in incognito.
Yeah, you're fine. You do that. Travis, we've got ICC coming up in 2 weeks. You'll be there. Alan's going to be there. In our audience, who's coming to Folsom in 2 weeks? Give us a quick comment if you're going to be there, and we probably need to do some type of a lunch or just group roundtable if we're going to have IntegrateLive members at ICC.
Yeah, it'd be some great time for that networking to happen there. We've got a great lineup of content provided by us and, of course, our community. Great Discover Gallery this year. Some incredible projects that are being showcased in that gallery. Lots of great vendors going to be there. I know Jeff and you're going to be there representing Flow and a lot of I think Rudy's coming as well on the Stratus side.
Nice.
So we got a lot of great vendors to be able to show off what they're doing, and we're going to talk about our next release 8.3. So it's going to be really cool.
Well, Alan, we've got our house down on Sutter Street again this year. So within a 3-block walk of the Fat Rabbit, we've got a Flow and IntegrateLive back patio for after-hour conversations as well. So more details to come on that.
Okay, I got the
last.
You're remembering about chicken sausage not being a thing.
That's right. Yeah.
I have so many cookies in my computer.
Garth has a comment while you're doing that. He likes to comment on the soft PLCs. This may be a generalization, but in his opinion, there's lots of machines out there running obsolete legacy PLCs. A compelling soft PLC option that is easy to deploy and works with legacy I/O would be a very interesting use case.
Yeah, and they actually have done a lot of work around that. The I/O connecting to soft PLCs, so it's come a long way.
Yes, it has.
Okay, so after some issues with the cookies and the incognito windows, we have now I have scanned the QR code. I got the QR code back, and now we are actually provisioning the VM as another node in our list of nodes in Barbara platform. I wanted to talk a little bit here about what we are doing at the moment is that deploying Ignition and everything that we are doing here, it can actually be done in several nodes, okay? And that's part of the power of it. So I could go here and say, okay, I want to deploy a marketplace application, and I want to install it, and I want to deploy maybe a Grafana in all those nodes. And there are some options whether you want to overwrite if there is already an installed version. You configure the whole Grafana, you configure the default dashboards, everything that you want to configure. And actually, you can just review the batch. Where are you sending them? There is some permissions here that are required depending on your level in the platform. But basically, you can save and launch it. So now you will have all these nodes that will be installed in Grafana, and also in the Rudy's, there will be a Grafana running, okay? So there is, of course, there is no need for an edge platform sometimes if you only have one node. doesn't make any sense sometimes. But if you're gonna have a lot of nodes, this is something that you will need. Okay. So now we have created this VM. We have taken the QR. We have added to the platform. It's quite easy, and we're gonna deploy what we promised. That was a Ming stack. So we're gonna deploy first the InfluxDB coming from our marketplace as well. I'm gonna keep the default variables, but as authentication variables. Okay. So it's gonna be pulling. This one will take some time because this node is totally new, fresh new. We created during the demo. Another thing about Barbara that I want to really point out, I think Alan said before, you have all these computers around, and they are computers, and we cannot forget that they are computers. So we as Barbara, one of our main value that we add to the platform is that we maintain our operating system. So you can go here to firmware updates, and we will maintain our operating system and our node manager. We will release the patches, the security patches, everything. So your node doesn't become one of these zombies that you have sometimes around in the factories. There is an Ubuntu from maybe 10 years ago that has been running an application. I think we are not in that environment anymore, and everything needs to be up to date from the firmware to the last application. So you can actually do that with Barbara. I'm gonna keep deploying things. Now I'm gonna deploy.
And the great thing is that when you do deploy those updates, you've got a fault tolerant system where things will continue to run. So that's very exciting.
That and another thing I'll point out, guys, is that these networks today, my internet happens to be working pretty well, but a lot of times, right, especially like let's say you're out in a unreliable network area and that's where your nodes are. Something that I really like about the way Barbara does it is it's going to store everything in that agent. And when it's ready, it's then locally going to do the deployment, right? So it's not in the middle of it, dependent on a network. It's going to download everything, store it in that agent, and then deploy it from that agent versus trying to do it over the wire. And that can make a huge difference in practice and user experience.
We have a question. We have a question that's come in. I think it would be wise to address. IONut, which could be, I assume, is not just a given name. It's also predestination, because when your name is IONut, you're probably going to be a process or control engineer. IONut. Great question that's come in. It's about the relationship between Stratus and Barbara. So question to both. For Barbara, is Stratus the only hardware that you work with? And for Stratus, is Barbara the only orchestration software that you work with?
So the answer is no. We're completely independent of one another. So we're showing today how you can use Barbara on Stratus in order to make your deployments easier. You can certainly utilize other deployment methods within the Stratus system. We recommend finding a good orchestration partner, however, when you're doing things remotely and at scale. And then Isidro, I don't know if you want to address.
So I'm going to send this. As I think Rudy in the very beginning of the presentation, he said that we have this image that is available for all these hardwares. We support hardware from Schneider, hardware from Advantech, and actually some of our customers, they're asking us for portings to specific hardwares. We support from very small hardwares like Raspberry Pi Zero. Please don't use this in production environments, but it's good for development environments. We support very powerful machines with GPUs, with artificial intelligence capabilities. Also virtualization machines like the one we are using today with Stratus, that we think it's a very good partnership.
And this really is why IntegrateLive is interested in Stratus and in Barbara, because it's that concept of openness, interoperability. You're not being locked if you're a Barbara user to a piece of hardware, and you're not being locked to an orchestration software if you're a Stratus user. And so it's just really important that these partnerships stay open, and so that best in breed always wins, or the right tool for the right job is what gets put forward. And that's why this demo is showing Ignition, it's showing Canary, but now we're taking a turn and showing, well, what if I just wanted to use a bunch of open source software to do something similar? You get to choose the right application for your environment. You're not being held to anything.
So yeah, I have just deployed. We have deployed an MQTT influx application that is from our marketplace. We provided. Basically, it connects an MQTT broker with an influx. We have also deployed Node-RED, and we have also deployed Grafana in the same node. I think you were saying before, and I think before the starting the live feed, Travis said something very good. Is that we cannot be experts on everything, and that's something that I think in this whole edge environment, I think there is a lot about the ecosystem. So you need to build the tool that you want to build, and you be the best on that, but rely on the proper partners on every aspect. I like Ignition connecting to Canary. That might be competitors sometimes, but also very good solutions together. So we think that we are not going to be building our own hardware because it would be stupid, and we are not going to build our own fault tolerance tool. So it wouldn't make any sense. Okay, so I'm gonna. Now I'm going to go to the InfluxDB. I think it's easier because in Grafana I have to build the dashboard. So I'm going to go just directly to InfluxDB. I don't know how the timing aspect are we at the moment.
Yeah, we're okay. We'll wrap up the demo over the next 5 or 7 minutes, and we'll move just to questions and final wrap-ups.
So I'm going to enable the VPN. It's not enabled by default. So I'm basically connecting this VM again to the VPN. I'm going to take that IP. Since I am in the same VPN, it will work. So I can go directly to InfluxDB.
I know we've talked about this multiple times, but you're working on the Stratus that's in Texas, not in Madrid. And when you click that box that says enable VPN, that is an outbound connection. You're not coming into that system, it's outbound.
Totally right.
Which is very important.
Everything that Barbara does has actually, I haven't talked about that, but there is a typical question for us that is, why do we build our own operating system? There are 2 reasons for that. The first one is that once we build the operating system complete, you can deploy images, and deploy images is much more powerful than deploying agents, because the people that has to install an agent has to connect to SSH, install an Ubuntu, blah, blah, and we were talking about the knowledge in the field might not be the case. Okay. There is a second element to deploy our own operating system, is that we can guarantee that our operating system has encrypted hard drive, has no open ports, has a secure boot, has all the elements that makes an operating system hardened are already included from out of the box. You don't need to configure the operating system to actually get that, and you can focus on the applications. That is where actually the value comes from. Okay, the value doesn't come from having a perfect Linux. It comes from having a very nice application that is going to take predictive maintenance, or it's going to save you some cost, or it's going to predict something. So I'm now on Influx. I'm going to try to query some data. Okay, so the data is being published in Influx. Temperature. So I'm going to start submitting. Okay, we can see something for the last. Let's put less time. 1 minute. So I'm receiving data. Okay, so I keep submitting data. So now it's your moment, Rudy.
My time to shine.
All right, so Rudy, you're getting ready to trip over the cabinet and break a piece of equipment, start a small fire. And we're relying on what? The automatic redundancy inside of the ZTC?
That's correct. So what you're going to see here, and what we should probably show is the other screen that shows the data, and then we'll go and show you the alerts in Stratus. So you guys know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get down there on my hands and knees, and I'm going to pull the power from the primary node. Before we do that, can we show? I want to show everybody where
it's all. Yes. Yeah. So that actually the virtual machine that we are playing with now at the moment in the data is the Barbara secondary. You can see here some small arrows. So it means that at the moment is mainly running on the node 0. It has replicability on the node 1, but it's mainly running on the node 0. So Rudy, you should switch off the node 0 so we can see that basically there is no lag.
You got it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down there and I'm going to pull the power on node 0 and it's going to go dark. And I will count down for you guys. It's my favorite part. I can hardly contain my excitement, guys. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. Just pulled power. And
there has been a lag of 1 second, something like that the query didn't come, but it's been basically perfect.
You guys see why I have to get very excited, because the demo itself is boring, which is exactly how we want it to be.
That's all right. The best demos are boring.
And you'll see your critical alert.
Very simple.
Node 0 dead.
How's the fallback?
What's that?
How's the fallback?
It'll take maybe 10 minutes, but what I can do is I can plug it back in, and we'll see how long it takes to start back up. But the fallback, I'm really glad you asked that, Alan, because there's a lot of systems that you can design in a way that maybe can handle a failover pretty well. But one of the beauties of what we're doing in Stratus, we talk about being simple, protected, and autonomous. And autonomous is all about never having to pull a keyboard out or having to do any other clicks to get back up and running. It's not how you run through a failure, it's how you get back up and run from it. 1 second, I'll plug it back in.
All right. While he's doing that, we're going to start to shift. One of the, as we start to wrap up, the audience is asking, hey, I've already been on the website. I'm looking for pricing information. If our IntegrateLive audience knows, we never disappoint. We're always going to talk about price, because you have to know what something costs so that you can make the best decisions for yourself and your group. And as you might have guessed, right? It's like, I think somebody already said, oh, I'm worried about sticker shock. I'll be the first to say, you might get a little sticker shock when we first start talking about price. Rudy, we're ready to start talking about price.
Okay.
So let's start on the hardware side and let's talk through it.
Sure.
So
the way,
ZTC charge? Yeah.
What's that?
What's our range based on specs and things like that?
Sure. So what we're working on here is the Stratus ZTC 250i. You can buy these in single node or dual node configurations. And what that means is that you could use it just as a single server with no backup. In order to have high availability or fault tolerance, obviously you need 2 nodes. I would say that this is obviously going to depend on where you are in the country. We go to market through industrial channels, so you'd have to reach out to your distributor. But sticker price on them is about $7,500 list price per node.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the list of specs for that?
1 second. If you'd like, I can show them to you, because it's probably easier to do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at, Alan, is that you shouldn't think of this as a simple IPC replacement. This is truly a server class machine that you're going to be consolidating quite a bit of hardware on.
Yeah.
1 second, I will show the specifications here.
And we're going to talk through a couple of things. We're going to talk through first just the hardware and the cost, right? The cost or the value proposition from the hardware. But I think it's important we also talk through total cost of ownership, value proposition when it comes to maintenance or maintaining that hardware, and then a final caveat before we talk about Barbara. Go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So the way, some of the things that I want to point out about Stratus is, one, don't think of a standard IPC or a Dell box, right? Our products are, you're looking at 5 to 8 year life cycle, and we never tell you that you need to upgrade. Now we sell service agreements with all of our products. And support agreements. And so one of the things that you can do is, for example, you can have replacement of your nodes covered as part of your service agreement. So let's say you have a failure. We were talking about what happens during a failure. What many times will happen is a system fails, you continue to run because you're fault tolerant and you never knew that it failed. Part of your agreement covers your new hardware. So within 24 hours, the next day, some hardware hits your dock. And you say, why did I get this piece of hardware? We'll tell you, go look in your cabinet. One of them is blinking red. Take it off of the DIN rail, reland all your wires, never hit a keyboard, just power it up, and you're going to be back up and running. So there's services that you'll need to consider yearly for each of them. There's different tiers of services that you'll do that. And you'll need to consider the entire life cycle, which in our case is more in the 6-7 year range. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Is there something else you wanted me to cover there on pricing?
Well, I had a question about, so we're using the 250i, right? That's what you're using in the demo. And we saw you spin up three VMs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What is your kind of capacity for the 250i, just typical VM as you stood them up? I know that it depends on what you're going to run on the CPU usage, the memory, all that varies, but just a typical, hey, you spun 3 up. Is that the limit? Is it 5?
Usually we tell people about 4. Now, if you're spinning up really small images, keep in mind you're going to use resources. When you put them in fault tolerant mode, you're going to use more resources because we're running it simultaneously on more units, right? So it's going to depend on your mix of fault tolerant versus HA. Once you use your resources, right, you got 10 cores and 64 gig of memory, et cetera, you're going to allocate that amongst all of them. But we typically tell people about 4 VMs is what we see people run. So what we see often is 1 VM for cybersecurity. Hey, I'm going to run my virtual firewall. I'm going to run my Clarity stack, my NDR, EDR, et cetera. I see 1 for SCADA. Right, so I want to run an overall SCADA, maybe run my HMI and run some advanced process control, whatever it is. Often we see another VM being used for things like device management. So in process industries, you'll see people who say, "Hey, look, I need something to manage all of my devices that I have in the field, right, and configure
or something like that." You're talking about asset discovery, stuff like that.
Yeah, correct.
Version control.
Yep. We'll see people run backup and recovery. We'll see people run a historian. So really, it's going to depend on your stack. But typically, we tell people 4 VMs.
Okay.
Barbara is quite lean. Actually, you could make more like 8 VMs probably. So Barbara doesn't require so much resources. It's a very light operating system. So with 2 cores and a couple of gigabytes, it can run perfectly a Node-RED. Of course, if you run AI models or something like that, you will have to put a lot of power there. But Barbara is not Windows, let's say. So to have a small Barbara running with maybe a runtime or something like that, it's not really demanding. Okay. I think that the price questions will come to me, eventually.
Quick question that came in from Garth. Redundancy at the disk level.
Yep. So that there is in fault tolerant mode, we absolutely everything is redundant. So much so that the application doesn't know that it's running on redundant hardware either. But yes, all the way down to the disk level. So as you saw, we had 0 data loss even when we killed the node completely.
Yep. And then before we pivot, Cedro, another just consideration. I just want the audience to consider back to when Rudy had his camera and we were looking inside of the cabinet. A weird thing just happened in my home life. My wife and I were in a conversation about adding a chest freezer or adding an upright freezer to our garage. And the number one priority that I had in that was not price. It wasn't reliability. It wasn't longevity. Alan, you've got a garage. What's your number one priority if you're thinking about putting something in your garage?
Space.
Space, 100%. My entire focus was on how much square footage am I getting ready to lose for the other things inside of my garage.
And why is my wife bringing anything into my shop?
Our shop, Alan. 20 happy years of marriage. Our shop.
She's got a front garage.
Stop. You're only going deeper. But so just another consideration is, right?
Scoot back
Hey,
your mic. Lean back,
Say it.
Jeff. You went bad. When you lean forward, your mic messed up. There you go.
I'm two directional. Yeah. When I'm thinking form factor, and I'm thinking how much room do I have in the cabinet, and running potentially 3-4 different pieces of software that typically might require a lot more space in form factor otherwise. Yeah.
I want to hear from
All right.
Barbara.
Yeah.
What's your cost?
So what you have been we have been looking at today, it's our SaaS platform. It's based on the cloud. That one has an entry level of 2,000 per month, and it allows 200 workloads. We call a workload every let's say every card that we have been up to. So a Docker Composer is a workload. Okay. We have a lot of flavors of that on top of that, depending on the support. We work usually with system integrators, so the support is much slower. But if you want to have a relationship with us and you want to have an enterprise level, an on-prem deployment, it can be on private cloud, it can be on VM, can be our version that is called Barbara Solo. So there is a lot of flavors on top of that. So those are under quotation. So, but the entry level, the one that you can basically run 200 workloads in as many devices as you want, that one is more or less 20K a year.
Do you have anything for companies who may not be needing 200? They need 10?
We can talk about that. Usually that will be done through a system integrator. So the system integrator may have a specific offer for them, or they can do it through their own account. So that everything can be talked through, let's say.
Oh, so there's a point. So if I'm a system integrator, I can potentially take my 200 workload and divide it out amongst my customers.
Yeah, that's something that you could do. What we see is usually that you create one account per customer, because
Okay.
you don't want eventually you want to, the system integrator is somebody that eventually stays there, but eventually can get out. So you don't want your customers having access. Eventually, you will have to give access to that Barbara panel to your customer. So you don't want them to see your other customers, let's say. So
Yeah.
it depends. It depends a lot on the size of the final customer, the size of the system integrator. There are a lot of options here. We sometimes, with very big companies, we work directly with software manufacturers. But that's a different, let's say, problem sometimes.
Okay. Pricing's out of the way. Thank you, guys. And then final questions that I've highlighted along the way as we wrap over the next minute. Garth had a question. Alan, you were referencing soft PLCs. You said something about they. Who is the they?
I answered it. It's I would highly recommend connecting with Josh Vargas. ODOT stuff has really been pretty resourceful, pretty quick to get. And he's got some other stuff that he's reviewed from the Ethernet IO space. But Josh Vargas is a great resource there.
Okay, thank you. And Lynn asked a question, I believe directed, would make most sense to Barbara. Can this run on a cloud server like AWS? I guess the question is, run it privately in my own cloud?
Yeah. So our platform, the backend platform that actually supports everything, is Kubernetes based. So it's cloud agnostic. So we can install it in. Of course, we will take it to an enterprise level, and we'll have to be looking at a private instance. But it can run on AWS. We have instances on Azure as well, and even we have a light version that can be run on a VM. It's a Barbara inside a Barbara. It's an exception thing.
And then the final point or question was all really early on. Two different audience members said, "Hey, look, I just need to know how to talk to my IT department about getting permission to get outside the network." I will just, obviously that's not going to get answered in 30 seconds, but I will recall something, Alan, that you did back at ERA after getting shut down by IT time and time again on a direction that OT wanted to go. You reframed the question. You stopped asking for permission for a thing and asked for, give me your minimum requirements for security. and let me
Guardrails. Instead,
give me the guard.
Tell me what I have to meet to make this work, and give me the guardrails. As long as I'm within the guardrails, it gets automatically approved. And so, again, the key here, as we've been talking about, and your question about the DMZ, the key of this is the outbound, right? So it's not necessarily a service that you install in the DMZ. It goes outbound. If you have an IDMZ, you go outbound to the IDMZ to Barbara. So it really depends on where you want to put the service. But you'd put the service in the DMZ. It's what reaches out to Barbara. It's outbound. It's not inbound, and you can work with security and get that that's not hard to get approved in my experience. It's anything coming into the zone that's really becomes a challenge.
All right.
We have been deployed in 62443 environment. You need to have proxies and single points of outputs and blah, blah, blah. But eventually, it's as Alan was saying, it's just take the requirements first ask for the requirements and then meet them. Don't do the other way around, because they will find another one.
Yeah, you don't want to take a piece of hardware to security and say, can I use this? Don't ever do that. It does not work. Find out what the requirements you have to meet. Make sure that the hardware and the software you choose meets those requirements, and then you can document it and take that to security.
If you visit Alan's Patreon page, he'll drop the link below. He will work you through a coaching session and role play on exactly how to do it. Yeah. Hey, listen, I want to say thank you. Travis, thank you for joining. It had to be fun watching Ignition get deployed and doing nothing.
It was awesome. Just, it just works.
And,
I'll say one other thing, Jeff. The reality of what we did today, right? I mean, think about an hour and a half. Some really good dad jokes happened, but beyond that, we spun up 3 VMs. We deployed Canary, Ignition, Grafana, Node-RED, and all of it just worked. Yeah. And we're not talking about Travis Cox, who can do anything. We're talking about just a typical CTO that, hey, I'm clicking some buttons and pointing some things, and it just works, right? So it's pretty impressive.
Yep, it was a great demo, Rudy.
Thank you, yeah.
And I'll just end us off by saying I had a weird night last night, Rudy. I went to the grocery store, bought a gallon of milk. Cashier said, strip down facing me. 20 minutes later, I'm in my boxers in the back of a cruiser. Did not go as I planned.
You should just do that with a credit card, not your pants, just so you know.
That's the problem.
Strip down.
Strip down facing me. Everybody, thank you. Episode 20 is in the books. We'll see you at ICC, and we'll be back in October with episode 21. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.